Hey, welcome back to the Road to Retirement. My name is Chris Anselmo with Brookside Tax and Financial Group, and today is December. So late in the
December
year.
1st.
Yeah. So Tony Marlette's our co-host, and what are we talking about today, Tony?
Well, today I thought we would follow up on a piece that we did for the newsletter on the asset management process. So, a lot of people, we obviously are well known for being a tax firm. We do financial, legal, and insurance matters as well. So, a lot of people may not know what our process is like for doing financial planning. And I think we should go through that today.
Right. We probably added financial planning 20 years ago, but still to this day, a lot of our clients just, unfortunately, they just think of us as a tax firm. So hopefully we can, by now they should. I mean, our building has it, all our logos have it, our signage has it. So we're a lot more than a tax firm. Actually, tax is probably only about 30% of what we do. The rest of it is financial planning. And also, we have for our listeners, we have a law office that concentrates in estate planning and elder care planning. So that's the majority of what we do. So asset management process. Well, I think the first thing is, obviously you got to have that initial meeting, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the first step that we take is going to be the data gathering step. So really, we always our biggest thing is bring in your financial statements. You can tell us what you have, but at the same time, people don't always know what type of accounts they are. They don't most of the time people don't even know how they're allocated in these
Yeah,
accounts. So
and sometimes people are just hesitant. Maybe they're afraid that like they have things all over the place and they're such a mess they don't really want to admit it. you know,
yeah.
they gather it all up in one time. They don't. It's kind of a process, but the process, the first thing we got to know where everything's at, right?
Right, and I use we do this a lot in the industry. We compare things. We use a mechanic example. I use for this step. I use the example. Say you're going to a new doctor that you've never met with. That doctor is going to need your medical history, if you've had procedures, what prescriptions you take, what you got, what you have going on. So it's kind of like that. I'm not saying we're doctors. We're
Yeah,
financial
I
doctors,
have a
but
doctorate.
you do have your Dr. Anselmo. So there you go. Just look at one of the book covers.
Yeah,
We need all that. It's the diagnosis step.
right, right. It's really, and sometimes I tell people initially, look, I'm not trying to pry and get, but like, if you don't tell me everything you have, I can't really do my job the best I can do it. If you're only going to give me half of what I need to see the whole picture. Whether or not we actually change the whole picture is not the issue, but without seeing the whole picture, I don't really know. Like if you come in and you say, "Look, I got $50,000," and you didn't tell me about the other $100,000 at the bank, well, it's different planning than if I think you only have $50,000 in total, right? So, um,
Yeah,
and
that's a
whether
good.
yeah, whether or not we even touched $100,000 at the bank isn't the issue. The issue is we need to see the overall picture. And sometimes, at the end of these 2, 3 meetings, maybe you're exactly where you want to be, and that's good. And at least you got confirmation from us that you're in a good spot. But it's rare that someone goes through 2 or 3 meetings and says like everything's perfect.
Right.
Um, but again, the first thing is really taking an inventory, right? Gathering the data, taking the inventory.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point that you bring up. I have people sometimes, like you said, they get apprehensive
Yeah,
about bringing stuff in, and they even say, "Well, I'm not moving this account." Okay, for
that's
whatever
fine.
reason, that's fine. We
Yeah,
just need to know
and
what it
some
is and
yeah,
and where. Yeah,
and sometimes it's because, like, I worked for Coca-Cola and I wanna keep my Coca-Cola stock. That's fine, but we need to know, we need to
right.
know that that's 30% of your overall wealth, right? So, our job isn't look, we're fiduciaries and we're acting in your best interests. We're not just here to move money. Look, where as a non-fiduciary, if you're like with just a brokerage firm, remember they only make money when they move money, like on transactions. So, um, we just charge you an annual fee for the most part, unless if you use an insurance product, we will let you know what that fee is going to be. It usually doesn't come out of your money, but um, yeah, I mean, we don't make money just moving money. So it's really important that you understand the difference between a broker and a fiduciary. So brokers only make money when they're moving money. So so that's part of it. But costs generally, like at the end of the day, the client always pays. Right, whether you're paying the broker or paying us or paying a mutual fund company or paying an like at the end of the day, the client always pays. So, and the fee shouldn't be the number one criteria. If someone's going to charge you a 0.5% versus 0.75%, that shouldn't be your number one criteria of who you do business with.
Right.
Really should be who's got the best overall plan for you, right?
I think it was Warren Buffett that said cost is just a number in the absence of value. So you want to
Right.
make sure you're getting, you're getting what you're paying for.
Yeah, and you can see it. I mean, take the typical automobile industry, right? Look, I like Hondas, right? They're practical. They do well. They don't, uh, they don't break down a lot. But I have friends who have Maseratis, and they're like, "Look, I like a Maserati. I can afford it. I think the value's good, or Mercedes, or whatever it is." But if you don't think you're getting if you're going to pay for Mercedes, but you're going to get the quality of, I don't pick on any companies, but let's a Dodge, so. Then you feel like you got ripped off, right? So if you paid $100,000 for a Dodge, you probably felt like that wasn't worth it. So like you said, with the absence of value, the price is price is irrelevant. So,
Right.
um,
Yep. Second, really, part of gathering data is actually looking at what your goals are.
right,
Goals are really, they should be specifically defined, and it's not just, well, I want to make money or I don't want to lose money. It should be,
yeah,
I want to create an income stream in retirement that I can live off of. That's just an example.
and
Um,
they change over time, right?
for sure.
Your goal when Tony's 40 years old, his goal is different than my goal at 60. So, um, yeah, it's going to change over time, and it's not as if you've done anything wrong necessarily. It's just life happened, and you started investing in your 20s and 30s, and now you're 60. You gotta reassess that.
I think one thing that it helps us do also is just kind of get through some of the noise. We've seen a lot this year,
Yeah,
certainly,
yeah,
volatility and people coming in. Well, I don't like all this volatility. Okay, well, what if the market goes back up? Do you want to get back in? If the answer is yes, then you're not sticking to a clearly defined goal.
yeah. We
We
have
use those goals to stick to your strategy and kind of cut through some of the noise and the mess to make sure we stay on point.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes it's not investing.
Right.
We have people in cash right now, and one lady in cash, and she called the other day, and she says, "I can't believe that money's not invested." I'm like, "Well, I could lower it by 30% if you want." I mean, the market's down 30 or what it is down for the
Right.
year. But, sometimes cash is a position,
It
right?
is now.
Yeah, right.
It certainly is now.
So you don't have to be 100% invested all the time. And we probably suggest that you shouldn't be 100% invested all the time. You need some go-to money if emergencies arise. But yeah, so establish the goal. What is the goal? Do you want to retire in 5 years, or are you retiring in 20 years?
Right.
You got to pay for colleges. You got to pay for your kids growing up.
Yeah,
Tony's
and I mean, really, the only time, yeah, I know.
Tony's gonna be faced with all that. God bless him. Him and his wife are expecting a child, so that's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you're right. You're starting to think about all these things in
College.
relation to
College is
that.
gonna be like 200 grand.
Well,
It's
and
gonna get to the point where you don't have to pay for college, right?
here's the thing I look at. There's the conventional wisdom. You have kids earlier in your life when you're saying your 20s and 30s. You mentioned I'm in my 40s. My wife's in her 30s. Um, but you take on all those expenses when you're younger,
Right.
and you're operating on a deficit for the most part. But you get a little bit more, she's more into her career, I'm more into mine. You get a little more established. Yes, you're older, you're having children, but at the same time, like, we're a little better off than we would have been in our 20s and 30s.
Sure.
Now the drawback to that is going to be, 15 years from now, I'm going to be a pretty old dad with a kid in high school. So that's the drawback.
That's okay. More the merrier.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so establishing a goal. So that's usually probably in the first meeting, right? Where you say, okay,
Yeah,
you're going to give us the information. You're really, why are you here? What do you want us to accomplish? I mean,
right. Yeah,
and
those first 2
and
steps
and,
typically
and,
occur during the
and
first meeting.
sometimes it's I don't know the right word, but some people they don't even think, well, I'm supposed to have a goal, right? What do you want? Really, really, what do you want this money to do for you? Do you,
Right,
you know? So, and maybe that's just a conversation they've never had before. And it's about time to have it. So,
right. After the first appointment, we typically are going to look at everything. Our analyzing step comes in between the first and the second appointment.
right.
So
So
we
our
gather
back
that.
office, yeah,
Yep.
we have a back office of CFPs and financial analysts that will help crunch the numbers for us, and then we'll present them to you. I guess second appointment.
I think this is my favorite step of the whole process is
Yeah,
looking at everything, putting the plan together. We work with you on a plan. Like Chris mentioned before, we're not just transactional. We put together a plan, whether that involves Social Security, taxes, Medicare, income planning, and we show it to you. We show it to you in an easy to read format. When you become a client, we print it out so you always have access to it, and we always go back to it. We essentially use that as our blueprint. So kind of rewarding to see the whole
yeah.
process start
And,
to finish. But this is a step where we usually really get our hands dirty.
yeah, I think the thing that we find the most, and again, it's not that you've done anything wrong, but most people, as they're approaching retirement, their risk score, like on a zero to 100, their risk score might be 50, where, but their investments say they're 70, right? And it's just because life happened. You were in your 20s and 30s and 40s, and you were investing appropriately for that age. And now it's time to just rebalance it a little bit to take some of that risk off the table. But everyone's different. Some people like I want to take the risk, and then we have clients that are fortunate. If you have quite a bit of money, you have two schools of thought. One school of thought is, one side of the brain says, "Look, we have plenty of money; we can afford to take the risks," and then the other half of the brain says, "We have plenty of money; we don't need to take the risks." So somewhere between those two halves of the brains is some sweet spot. So um, I think that happens in that second appointment or third
Yep.
appointment.
Yeah, yeah. We usually go over that, put the plan together, and then, like I said, go through a number of reports. We certainly don't want paralysis by analysis. We want to
Right.
make this,
Right.
we can simplify these reports. Honestly, we can get as detailed as you want or keep it
Yeah.
as simple as you want. Sometimes it's a matter of just showing people, here's where you are now, here's where you need to be, and this is what we need to do to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you get too detailed, like you say, oftentimes people get confused. Look, not everyone's a numbers guys like us. So sometimes simple's better. Even drawing it up on a whiteboard, you don't like none of this is perfect science. I mean, you're not going to get it down to every penny of where your money's going to go, but you just need some broad parameters on. Most people I think just want to like, can I retire? Am I being going to be okay in retirement? And some of the issues that we see, I tell people from the start, like, there's only really two things that are going to screw up your retirement. One, you're going to lose a lot of money in the stock market, which we can help you. Like, we can't say you're never going to lose money, but we can help you manage that risk. And two, getting ill. So those are the two biggest factors of retirement. If you again, if you lose 30% of your money in year one, you may have to keep working. Or if your health declines where you have to spend a lot of money on healthcare costs, that's another issue too. So
Yeah.
we can help you there
Ultimately,
too.
our plan is going to address all those things. And speaking
Right.
of our plan, talk is cheap unless you make recommendations and put them into place. So our fourth step, which usually is the second, at least we get a commitment in the second meeting, put it into place in the third meeting, or somewhere
Yeah.
in that range,
Eh,
is
eh,
making the recommendations, showing you what it's going to look like, and at least arranging to put it in
Right.
place.
And nothing happens until they say yes, right? So
Correct.
until the client says yes, we want to go forward, nothing happens. So there's no, and we don't charge for this process because if you like, I don't pat ourselves on the back, but most of our clients, when we go through this process, say yes, right? So, um, and then we're going to lay out all the fees, what fees you'll be charged, and where everything's coming from, so you know exactly what you're. So we don't want any surprises. Like I don't want someone to call up and say, "Hey, what happened? How come I got charged? $500 this quarter." Um, they're going to know that all up front, and then once they know that and they agree to it, we do it. If they don't agree to it, we don't do it. So
Right.
it's really that simple. But
Yeah,
I mean,
we
just
c
going through the process is enlightening, especially if you have things scattered all over the place. They said, and again, it wasn't that you did anything wrong. You opened an IRA when you're at this one employer, then they had a 401k, and you left that job, and all of a sudden you have 20 different accounts, and it's really time that it would be better. Like you only need one or two banks. You don't need eight banks. They don't give away toasters anymore, right? So one or two banks, maybe you need a brokerage account somewhere, and an IRA account somewhere, but other than that, and I think that's my phone going off. So,
our I
Andy
know the
Griffith.
ringtone. I do. Yeah, I was gonna say I know maybe most of our listeners will, and people tell me I'm too young to know that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but I
So,
know that ringtone.
Andy Griffith is my ringtone. So, somebody's calling. So,
We can make recommendations all day long. It's up to our clients to implement, whether we implement it, like you said.
yeah.
And honestly, we do a lot of the work. So
Yeah.
you
Right.
say yes, we're not going to ask you to call around all the different
No,
financial
no. Right.
institutions.
No.
We're going to do that for you. We have a back office
Or we do
that,
it
that
with you, right? We,
that can
we
do
sit
it.
there, we
We
call
make
right on this.
calls. Absolutely. I make calls with people all the time. And the nice part about that, we can do it in the office, but you don't have to come in for us to make the calls with you. If we have to make phone calls, we can do a simple three-way call. We need you on the line, obviously, but at the same time, we handle the account opening process and all the transfers.
Right. And if you can't come in and you want to just do a phone call, we could do that, or you want a Zoom call, something similar to what you're watching now. We could do that too. I think more and more people are okay with that, especially like in the winter and the weather's really bad. You don't
Or
want to
like
drive.
if,
You don't want to drive all the way in.
sure,
So
or if
so
people are sick or there's a
yeah.
pandemic or whatever.
So
When you become a client, the last step, I always say the relationship begins when you become a client. It
right,
doesn't end there.
right.
It begins, and we do yearly reviews. I've been doing a lot of these lately where we're reviewing accounts. It's not always pretty, and we know that right now. I think every account review I've had this year has been the performance unfortunately hasn't really looked that great. Not that that's necessarily
But
anybody's fault, but we talk about all those things during the
but
process.
some of the positions that we have people in, they said we didn't make any money, but you didn't lose 30%. So, in a year like this, sometimes zero is your hero, right? So if you had $100,000 and you still have $100,000 and it's not $70,000, but yeah, you didn't make anything, but you didn't lose $30,000. So again, sometimes zero is your hero. And a lot of the products, you have a new starting point. So your starting point next year is a little lower and you could potentially make the interest back. So there's a lot of good stuff out there, but you do have to monitor it, and that's probably where we kind of separate ourselves. We are being a fiduciary. We're not transactional. We don't make money every time we have to buy and sell a stock. So there's no fee for that. So there's no incentive on our end to keep trading, right? So the incentive on our end is to make sure you're keeping with your plan. And most people we see at least once or twice a year. Most of our clients, we do their tax return for, so we'll see them in the first quarter of the year. And then I think we kind of leave it up to the client. Did you want to meet two times a year? Do you want to meet three times a year? Do you want to meet four times a year? Some clients say, look, I'm good at one or two times a year. Some clients say, look, I just need a phone call now and then. And there's
Right,
other clients that we talk to every month. So,
right.
traditionally they're like, oh, you got to meet the clients every quarter. I
Everybody's
think, yeah,
different. You have to
yeah,
know your audience. We also look at if anything's changed in your situation during that time. If we need to make any changes to your plan based on
right.
what's changed in your life.
And we don't make changes unless there's a reason to make the change. Again, unlike a brokerage house, like we don't, if we buy IBM and sell Coca-Cola, we don't make any money, right? So there's no incentive for us to just keep buying and selling. So really, you only buy and sell when it meets the plan.
Right. Yep. When your goals change, we change. So we're not going to meet with you and say, well, the market's going crazy, let's get out. Now we might, if that affects your overall plan, but
Right.
if it doesn't, we're not just gonna, uh, make sales and make buys like
Right.
you said just to do it.
Because sometimes if we do have a really good year, then maybe you're out of alignment with your risk. Your risk said 50-50, and now it's 70-30, and maybe we need to tone it back down. That's why it's important. And most of our clients, even if they've never gone through a process like that, and even if they don't decide to do what we recommend, they're glad they went through the process. Like, wow, I didn't know all this. And yeah, I might stay the way I am, but at least I have a better understanding of what my money's doing or not doing. You know, and oftentimes we see maybe it's too much money at the local bank. Now, not from a risk standpoint that the bank would go under or anything, but traditionally, very liquid money pays very little interest. So,
Right.
and some of our older clients, like they might have two, $300,000 sitting in a checking account.
Yeah.
That's at least put in a savings account or something, right? Because it's really unfortunate that, but if that's their comfort level, so be it. We're not going to change the person. If you're used to using banks and you want pure safety, that's fine. But you have to know that you're giving up some upside. You know,
Right.
but
Yeah, and I mean, our review period is also a time to look at anything. If, like you said, if you last time we talked to you, you had $10,000 in the bank. Now maybe you've received an inheritance, or you've received a lump sum,
yeah,
and you have cat. I mean, it's all about just keeping updated with what's
right.
going on in your life.
Yeah, and we have our generational vault where we can put all your statements and things in like that. You also have access. We use TD Ameritrade, which is recently purchased by Schwab, so that'll be changing. But you have access. You can see all your accounts online if you are in an account at Schwab or TD Ameritrade. And if we do use some of the annuity companies do have online access too, so you can see your accounts there. So um,
Mm.
it's really about just getting a handle on where you're at, where you want to be, monitor from time to time. But again, most people that come in, stuff's all over the place. It's
Yeah.
just they got 20 different accounts, and they don't even know they got these accounts, and they have
Right.
no. Sometimes they don't have no clue what's in them, right?
Right.
So
So if we recap our 5 steps here for the asset management process: number one, we gather data. Number two, we establish goals. Three, we analyze the information. Four, we make recommendations and implement. And then step five, we monitor.
correct. And I think again, what separates us is we have this all under one roof. So taxes are an important part in anything. And oftentimes I see clients who have financial planners who just disregard tax. Like, we don't do taxes, right? So they don't even take that into account. Maybe they just don't have the knowledge, or maybe that's just their, lack of a better word, cop out. But I mean, how could you not take taxes into account,
Yeah,
right?
we
So
have to. And that is the nice part. We don't have to refer. We can keep literally everything in
yeah.
house.
And on the estate planning side, we talked a lot of other shows about nursing homes and things like that. And nursing homes are super expensive, and the risk of going in is pretty high. So if you don't plan for that, I mean, you could have saved $1 million in your lifetime, and then you could spend it all in a nursing home. So you want to make sure we plan for that. And that'll probably be another
Right.
topic someday. So, all right, Tony, great show. Maybe Tony Shore will be back with us next week. Hopefully, I'm not sure what he's doing. I think he took a little vacay. So good for him. Maybe it's snowing in Minnesota and he couldn't get to the microphone.
Maybe, yeah, they knew ahead of time.
Yeah.
But we have our own YouTube handle. I put everything on our screen, but for those of you listening, you can visit us online, brooksidetax.com, our Facebook page at Brookside Tax, our YouTube channel at Brookside Financial. Click, comment, subscribe. Of course, you can always give us a call. And if you reference this podcast or any one of our videos, you'll be able to pick up a complimentary copy of one of our books on retirement and estate planning as well.
And you'll get to listen to the
To the Andy
Andy
Griffith
Griffith
ringtone.
tunes. Okay, guys. We'll see you next week.
See you,
Thanks.
everyone. Thank you.